Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Gardener. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's September 16th. National Indoor Plant Week is this week. Be sure to follow my friend Lisa Steinkopf, the houseplant guru. You can check her out on Twitter. Just search for @houseplantguru. And Lisa is giving away copies of her books and even some houseplants. So head on over to Twitter and track down Lisa. And remember, it's all week long. So happy Indoor Plant Week. Go get yourself something new for the indoor season, which is just around the corner, especially if you live in a cold climate. Here's today's brevities. Today is the anniversary of the death of Charles V of France, who died on this day in 1380. He commissioned his cook, Guillaume Tyrrell, to create the very first cookbook. The full title of the book is an exceptionally long one. In English, it translates to Hereafter follows the recipe collection describing the preparation of all manner of foods as cooked by Tyrrell, the cook of our noble king, and also the dressing and preparation of boiled meat, roasts, sea and freshwater fish, sauces, spices, and other suitable and necessary things as described hereafter. As the culinary world was getting underway, it's interesting to note that during Charles V's reign, the very first forks were found to be included in an inventory, and gardeners with some knowledge of mushrooms will find the death of Charles V intriguing. Some historians believe that he died as a result of eating the highly poisonous Amanita mushrooms. And today is the birthday of the Scottish plantsman Robert Fortune, who was born on this day in 1812. Robert Fortune's name is inextricably bound to China and to tea and the tea plant, Camellia sinensis. For centuries, China had a monopoly on tea. They alone grew the plants. They made black tea and green tea, and the rest of the world had no idea how they did it. By the 1700s, the British had started enjoying exports from China, porcelain, and yes, tea. But China was not interested in goods from Britain, and the lopsided relationship created a problem. This is where Robert Fortune enters the scene. By the early 1800s, he was a trained botanist, learning at the hem of some of England's finest gardens, and he got hired to go to China by the Royal Geographic Society, and Fortune stayed for 3 years before returning home to England. When he returned, Fortune wrote about his time in China, and he drew the attention of the British East India Company. They were serious about obtaining tea plants from China, and they were desperate to learn how to make tea. So they wisely select Fortune, and with his unique combination of botanical and Chinese expertise, they send him back to China. This time, Fortune was on a much more specific mission, and he knew what he needed to do. He went to China incognito, dressed as a mandarin. He had shaved the front of his head, and he basically had extensions sewn into the hair on the back of his head, so he looked like he had this amazingly long ponytail. He looked 100% the part. Then he hired guides to do the talking for him, and since there was no national language, it all flew under the radar. Once in China, Fortune immediately began visiting tea plantations. He learned the methods and the ways of harvesting tea plants to make tea. He learned that green tea and black tea come from the same plant. It's just the processing method that makes them different. Thanks to the Wardian case, Fortune was able to get live plants to India. All told, Fortune managed to smuggle out 20,000 tea plants, and he shipped them all to India. He even managed to get some of the Chinese tea farmers with their tools to leave China and to help set up tea production in India. Sarah Rose, one of the authors who has written a biography on Fortune, and hers is excellent, said that what Fortune accomplished was no less than the greatest single act of corporate espionage in the history of the world. Today, China is still the top tea producer with over 2.4 million tons of production, followed by India at a little less than half, and then Kenya, Sri Lanka, and Vietnam make up the next spots. So, tea being grown outside of China is a direct result of Robert Fortune, and India, as the number 2 tea producer in the world, was a feat that was accomplished in less than 2 centuries. And again, it wouldn't have happened without Robert Fortune. On this day in 1835, Charles Darwin arrived at the Galapagos Islands on board a ship called the HMS Beagle. Once he's on the islands, Darwin begins to check out all of the varied and unique plants, and they get him thinking. The experience basically shapes his theory of natural selection. In unearthed words, here are some thoughts about September from the nature writer Robert Finch. But now in September, the garden has cooled, and with it, my possessiveness. The sun warms my back instead of beating on my head. The harvest has dwindled, and I have grown apart from the intense midsummer relationship that brought it on. Today's book recommendation is The Chinese Kitchen Garden by Wendy Keung Spray. Back in 2018, I had the opportunity to interview Wendy, and it remains one of my favorite conversations about growing and using edibles from the garden. The Chinese Kitchen Garden is half how to grow, half how to cook, and half an amazing glimpse into the wonderful Keung Spray family. So that's 150% worth of yummy, beautiful love in one book. As gardeners, sometimes we can get a little restless, searching for a new variety, something new to try. And when nothing strikes our fancy, we can feel a little unsatisfied. Well, Wendy's introduction to Asian vegetables is a spark, and it opens the door to growing a whole new cast of edibles. What I learned from Wendy is that the Asian vegetables that she learned to grow and eat are often upgrades from the standard varieties. Now that's exciting. So if you're looking for something new to grow next year, if you're a foodie, or if you want to start a kitchen garden, the Chinese Kitchen Garden is perfect for you. And if you want to check out my interview with Wendy over at the Still Growing podcast, just search for episode 601 and then hit play. During that episode, Wendy reads excerpts from many of my favorite parts in the book, and she also shares many of the amazing Chinese vegetables that she grows, like lotus root, bitter melons, stem lettuce, daylilies, and Chinese cucumbers. And she also shares their traditional recipes that you can make with them that will make you drool. Finally, Wendy's book is organized by season. It's so handy. You'll learn what to grow in spring and what to cook in winter. Today's garden chore is to make one last push to plant the trees, shrubs, and perennials that are on your list or the ones that you find discounted at the store. Do it now so that they can get established. And remember to water them well. Depending on where you're at, you have 3 to 4 weeks before the sprinkler system needs to get shut off. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. On this day in 1978, the Newcastle News out of Newcastle, Pennsylvania, shared an article by Mike Feinsilber titled "Exhibit Depicts Female Scientists." Here's what it said. When curator Deborah Warner suggested to her superiors at the Smithsonian Institution that she put together an exhibit documenting the accomplishments of American women in science in the 19th century, her superiors were skeptical. Women scientists in the 19th century? Would there be enough of them to fill an exhibit? They doubted it. Miss Warner didn't. Yesterday, her display opened in the Museum of History and Technology, telling of, among others, Kate Furbish, the botanist who discovered the now famous Furbish lousewort. It is now famous because it is endangered and for a time threatened to block construction of the Lincoln-Dickey Dam in Maine. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at thedailygardener.org, and be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and of course, Facebook. While you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for these 3 words, Daily Gardener Community. The group will pop right up and then request to join. Finally, I want to thank my team at Podfly Productions, where my fabulous editor is Eric Begay. Have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.